I'm Travis. I'm 29 years old, I work in IT, and I live about 2 hours away from the small town I grew up in. I visit home when I can, a couple weekends a month, most holidays. But if I'm being honest, it's always a bit of a gamble. Sometimes I come away feeling nostalgic and reconnected. Other times, it's like stepping into a time capsule where I'm still the black sheep, still the overly sensitive one, still the one who left. That's not what they say out loud, of course. No, in my family, everything toxic is wrapped in a smile and a casserole dish. Passive aggression is practically a love language. I'm the middle child, sandwiched between my golden boy older brother, Darren, who could set the house on fire and still be called charismatic, and my younger sister, Lacey, who's always been everyone's fragile little darling. Even though she's 25 and has a full-time job, Darren works in sales, and he's, well, charming in that way that makes you feel like you're being sold a vacuum cleaner even when you're just trying to have a normal conversation. He's always been the favorite, not in a he thinks he is kind of way. No, our parents never really try to hide it. If I got a B+ on a test, they'd ask why it wasn't an A. If Darren got a C, they'd joke that the teacher was probably just intimidated by his brilliance. I used to try hard to bridge the gap, overachieving in school, saving money, being responsible, but it never really landed. At some point, I just stopped trying to win them over and focused on building my own life. I moved out, found a job I enjoy, adopted a cat, even got into a long-term relationship that, for a while, made me think I was finally building something solid. Her name was Kira. We met through mutual friends, dated for almost 3 years, and I was really starting to think she might be the one, until I found out she'd been cheating on me with someone I knew. It broke me for a long time, and I don't think my family ever really understood how much it hurt. My mom's reaction was basically, well, these things happen. My dad, true to form, offered up a distracted grunt and changed the subject to football. Darren, of course, joked that maybe I should have just proposed sooner, as if commitment issues were contagious. So when Thanksgiving rolled around this year, I was actually looking forward to it, weirdly enough. I'd had a rough few months, thrown myself into work, hadn't visited home in a while. I thought maybe a holiday dinner, some turkey, old movies, maybe even a few laughs, would be a welcome reset. I even offered to bring dessert, and my mom sounded upbeat when I called a week before. Of course we're doing Thanksgiving, she said, same time as always. Looking forward to seeing you, sweetie. But then, 5 days before Thanksgiving, I got a text. This year, we're skipping Thanksgiving, just keeping it small. Nothing personal, we'll make it up to you. That was it. No call, no explanation. Just a bland, neutral message with the emotional warmth of a weather report. I stared at it for a while, wondering what keeping it small meant. My first instinct was to assume it was about finances. Maybe something came up, maybe Dad wasn't feeling well. I asked if everything was okay, if they were still getting together at all. Mom replied, just going to be me, your dad, and Lacey. Darren's out of town for work. Nothing big this year. It stung. I won't pretend it didn't. I'm not the most sentimental guy, but something about being quietly cut out like that, like I was just another guest who could be uninvited, left a bad taste in my mouth. I told myself it was fine. I picked up a rotisserie chicken and some frozen mashed potatoes from the store. Ate alone. Watched Netflix with my cat. Try not to think too hard about what my family was doing, or what they weren't telling me. And then the photo came. It was my cousin Claire who sent it. She and I aren't super close, but we've always gotten along. The kind of cousin who remembers your birthday and sends funny memes once in a while. The photo was a group shot of the dining table. A full spread of food. Candles. Wine glasses. Plates loaded with stuffing and cranberry sauce. Claire was sitting next to Lacey. Across from her was Darren. Very much not out of town. But it wasn't Darren that made my stomach drop. It was the woman next to him. Kira. Smiling. Sitting at my family's Thanksgiving table. I stared at the photo for a long time. My brain tried to fill in excuses. Maybe it was someone who just looked like her. Maybe it was old. Maybe it was. No, it was recent. Claire had captioned it, Happy Turkey Day, with a string of emojis. The timestamp was from 20 minutes ago. My heart started pounding. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I texted Claire, trying to keep it casual. Hey, is that Kira in the picture? Her response came quickly. Yeah, Darren brought her. Didn't you know they were dating? I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen. My chest felt tight. The air in my apartment suddenly felt too thin. My ex, the woman who cheated on me, was now dating my brother, and my family invited her to Thanksgiving and lied to me so I wouldn't come. I don't even remember grabbing my keys. I was halfway to my car before I realized I hadn't changed out of my sweatpants. I didn't care. I drove the 2 hours to my parents' house like I was on autopilot. Every mile ticked by in a blur. My thoughts were a loop, Darren and Kira, my mother's fake text, the photo, the fact that nobody thought I deserved to know, that they just excluded me, like I was the problem. When I pulled up to the house, every light was on. I parked across the street and sat there for a minute, trying to calm down. But I couldn't. I got out and walked up to the sidewalk. The windows were glowing with that warm, familiar light. I could hear muffled laughter through the walls. I crept closer to the front window, staying out of sight, and that's when I saw them. They were all at the table. Every single one of them. My dad carving the turkey. Lacey showing something on her phone to Claire. Darren had his arm around Kira, whispering something that made her giggle. My mom was lighting a second candle. There were name cards at each place setting. Mine wasn't there. But then, I saw something that made me stop cold. Something that turned my pounding heart into a silent, heavy thud in my chest. I couldn't move. Not at first. My feet were planted there on the cold front walkway like they'd fused with the concrete. I stared through the window, blinking to make sure I wasn't hallucinating, that I hadn't conjured up some cruel mirage. But no, it was real. As real as the scent of pine trees in the air. As real as the sound of Kira's laugh filtering through the walls. As real as the place card at the far end of the table. Darren had taken my usual seat, the one at the corner, next to Lacey, and placed a name card that said D+K, love. That was what made me stop cold. Not just that my brother brought my ex-girlfriend to Thanksgiving. Not just that he lied about being out of town. But that he sat her in my seat and had the audacity to use that stupid little heart, like they were proud. Like they claimed something. Like it was a joke and I was the punchline. My fingers clenched into fists. I could feel my breath coming in short bursts. My rational brain was screaming at me to walk away, to go back to the car, cool off, take a walk, anything, but my body wasn't listening. I felt like I was back in high school again, standing outside the gym watching Darren charm his way out of detention while I got written up for being 5 minutes late. Like I was 14 again, hearing Mom say, "Just let it go, Travis." He didn't mean it like that. Like I was 17 again, hearing Dad say, "Why do you always make everything about you?" And now? Now they were all inside, carving turkey and pouring wine, as if they hadn't just gutted me like a fish. I walked around the side of the house, heart racing, boots crunching softly on the gravel. I knew the side window would be cracked. Mom always left it slightly open for circulation. I leaned close, barely breathing, and caught more of their voices. "So, Kira," my mom was saying, "you'll have to give me that recipe for the sweet potato casserole. Darren said you made it from scratch." "Oh, it's nothing," Kira replied with a laugh I used to think was cute. My mom always said the trick was marshmallows and cinnamon. Super unhealthy, but super good. "I told you," Darren chimed in, his voice full of smug pride. "She's the full package." I got lucky. My mother actually giggled. "You two really are adorable." Adorable. I stood there in the dark like some pathetic ex-boyfriend in a movie. Except this wasn't fiction. This wasn't someone else's drama. This was my life. And they had rewritten it without me. I should have left. I should have walked away and never looked back. But when I heard my name, everything changed. "Do you think Travis knows?" Claire asked quietly. "I didn't realize you guys were, public." Darren gave a snort. "Travis is always off in his own world. You know how he is. He gets so intense. It's probably better this way." My mom sighed. "He just doesn't handle things well. He holds on too tight." Then Kira chimed in. "I didn't mean for it to happen, but I honestly feel like Darren and I just get each other on a different level. Travis was sweet, but I never really felt seen." That word hit me like a slap. Not love, not understood. Seen. I stepped back from the window, my face burning. I was shaking now, not from cold, but from the sheer force of betrayal pressing down on my ribs. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It wasn't just about Darren. It was the culmination of years. Years of being overlooked, gaslit, brushed aside. Years of being told I was too emotional, while Darren could do no wrong. Years of trying to be the good son, the quiet one, the fixer, the one who came home for birthdays and called on anniversaries and sent Christmas gifts and pretended like the cracks weren't growing deeper every time. This was the moment those cracks turned into a canyon. I stumbled back to my car, hands trembling, ears buzzing with the leftover laughter I could still hear echoing from the house. I sat in the driver's seat for what felt like forever. My phone lit up with a new message from Claire. "Hey, you okay? Didn't mean to upset you." I didn't answer. I stared at the glowing screen until the message disappeared. Then I opened my camera roll. I scrolled back to the last picture I had of Kira and me together. It was from last Christmas, standing in front of my apartment tree. She was wearing one of my sweaters. I looked happy in the picture. So did she. I deleted it. Then I opened my notes app and started writing. It started with a list. Not a revenge plan. Not yet. Just a list of things that suddenly felt clearer than they ever had before. Like, Darren has always taken what he wants. Mom always covers for him. Dad avoids confrontation by pretending nothing happened. Kira doesn't just betray people. She rewrites the story to make herself the hero. I've never demanded respect from them. I've always asked for it like it was a favor. And under all that, I wrote, "They think I'll stay quiet." I didn't go home that night. I drove around until I found a cheap motel off the highway. The clerk didn't even look up when I handed him my card. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, lights off, staring at the ceiling. That was when the memories started pouring in. Little things I hadn't thought about in years. Darren accidentally throwing out my science fair project in the 8th grade. Mom telling me not to make a scene at my own graduation when my name was skipped during the shoutouts. Kira flirting with Darren at a 4th of July barbecue 2 years ago. I'd noticed, but brushed it off. Even then, something had felt off. But I didn't trust my gut. I wanted so badly to believe I was just being insecure. But I wasn't. They were all so good at making me question myself. That was their real talent. Not honesty. Not loyalty. Just the ability to bend reality around their comfort zones. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I woke up early, stomach aching, mind still buzzing. I went back through my messages with my mom. I noticed something I hadn't seen the day before. A text from 2 weeks ago, where she said, "Darren's been so busy lately. We might not see him till Christmas." A subtle little breadcrumb to lay the groundwork. They'd been planning this lie in stages. I opened Facebook. Darren hadn't posted anything about Kira. Of course he hadn't. That would have risked someone tagging me, alerting me. Everything was calculated. I kept digging. On Instagram, Kira had a private account, but her profile picture had changed. It was her and someone else in silhouette, standing in front of what looked like my parents' back porch. The photo was taken at dusk. I zoomed in. It was Darren. No question. That photo had been uploaded 4 days ago. Before Mom told me they were keeping it small. My chest felt like it was caving in again. But this time, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt hollow, but focused. I started writing again. Not just notes. Not just angry bullet points. I started writing down the things I remembered about my parents' house. Not memories, but facts. The layout. The Wi-Fi password. The location of the breaker box. Where they kept their mail. What time they usually left for work. I wasn't planning anything yet, but I needed to understand what I was working with. Later that day, I got a text from my mom. "Hope you're doing okay. We'll do a little something at Christmas. Just low-key this year." I didn't respond. I think she expected me to be hurt, but manageable. The kind of upset that simmers quietly. The kind of upset she could handle with a warm pie and a hug that smells like fabric softener. But this wasn't that. Something had broken. And when it broke, something else started to wake up inside me. A different version of me. One that didn't want to be pitted. One that wasn't interested in apologies made over green bean casserole. One that had spent years watching, listening, and quietly building a backbone. And in that moment, I realized something. They thought cutting me out would keep things simple. They had no idea what they'd started. I didn't eat much for the next few days. I told myself I wasn't hungry, but the truth was, my stomach felt like a cold, hollow drum. Every time I tried to swallow anything more than coffee or toast, I'd feel that lump rising in my throat again. The same one I'd felt standing outside the house, watching my family laugh around the table I'd once been a part of. Thanksgiving was supposed to be about togetherness, about family, about gratitude. But what I got was a front row seat to my own erasure. I called in sick for the rest of the week. Nobody at work questioned it. I'm usually dependable to a fault, so when I said I needed time, they gave it to me. I spent those first few days drifting in and out of sleep, wandering through my tiny apartment like a ghost. The cat, Moose must have sensed something was off. He followed me from room to room, curling up near my feet and letting out little chirps like he was trying to comfort me. It helped. A little. Rock bottom isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just quiet. A slow, heavy silence that settles into your bones. I didn't feel angry anymore, not exactly. Anger takes energy. I was past that. I was something colder, something deeper. I wasn't crying in the shower or throwing things against the wall. I was just existing, like someone had turned down the volume on my entire life. And yet, in that silence, something shifted. One morning, maybe the fifth or sixth since that night, I woke up at 6:43 a.m. for no reason at all. The sky was still dark. Moose was curled against my back. I stared at the ceiling and thought, what if I never let them do this to me again? Not just Darren, not just Kira, but all of them. My family. What if I stopped shrinking myself to fit into their expectations? What if I stopped trying to earn a seat at a table they clearly didn't want me at? I got out of bed, made a fresh pot of coffee, and opened my laptop. I started with something small, updating my LinkedIn. Just a new header photo, a sharper summary, a couple of posts I'd been meaning to share from my last project. I wasn't even sure why I was doing it. It just felt like motion, and I needed motion. That small act triggered another. I responded to a recruiter message I'd ignored a week ago. Then I cleaned my desk, organized the cables, rearranged my second monitor setup. By noon, I'd overhauled my resume. By dinner, I'd sent out 4 job applications and updated my website. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the beginning of the climb back up. The next week, I signed up for a data analytics certification course. It wasn't something I had to do, my job paid well, and I was competent enough to stay afloat, but I needed to prove something to myself, that I was still growing, still learning, still worthy of investing in. Meanwhile, my parents were radio silent. No follow-up call, no check-in. I figured they were giving me space, the same way you might give space to someone having a tantrum. Let the storm pass. Let Travis cool off. He always comes around eventually. They didn't know that something inside me had changed permanently. I started therapy again. My company covers 10 sessions per year, and I hadn't used a single one. My therapist, Angela, remembered me from the year Kira and I broke up. I hadn't told her the full story back then. I'd painted it as mutual, like I always do. But this time, I didn't hold back. She cheated, I said flatly during our first session back. And now she's dating my brother. My family knew. They lied to keep it from me. Angela's expression didn't change. She just nodded gently and said, "That must have felt like a betrayal on every level." I laughed, but it came out wrong. That's one way to put it. Over the next few weeks, we dug deep. We talked about patterns, about how my parents had always praised obedience over individuality, about how Darren's recklessness was spun into charisma, while my caution was framed as insecurity, about how I learned to internalize every slight, every exclusion, and convince myself it wasn't a big deal. But it was. It always had been. Angela helped me name something I'd never fully admitted to myself. I felt disposable. To them. To Kira. Even to myself. That realization was painful, but it was also the first brick in the foundation of something new. By Christmas, I had a new job offer. Higher pay, remote flexibility, better benefits. When I told my current manager, she was surprised. "We thought you were happy here." But ultimately supportive. I didn't explain why I was leaving. I didn't know anyone that. My family, on the other hand, reached out at last. It started with a text from Lacey on December 20th. "Hey, Mom said she invited you to Christmas dinner? Please come. Things have been weird. I miss you." I didn't respond right away. I didn't know what to say. Part of me still missed her. She'd always been the least involved in the drama, but I couldn't pretend things were okay. Not anymore. Then came the voicemail from my dad. His voice was tight, formal. "Hey, Travis. Just wanted to say your mom and I would love to see you at Christmas. Hope you're well. Take care." No apology. No explanation. Just the usual vague politeness. I didn't call back. Then Christmas Eve rolled around, and my mom finally called directly. "Sweetheart," she began, her tone as syrupy as ever. "We'd love to have you tomorrow. It's just not the same without you." I paused before answering. "Is Kira going to be there?" There was a beat of silence. "Well, Darren's bringing her, yes. But I promise we'll keep things." "No. Travis, please don't make this harder than it has to be." That did it. Something snapped. "I'm not the one who made it hard," I said, my voice low but steady. You lied to me. You let my brother bring someone who humiliated me, and you didn't even think I deserved to know. You don't get to ask me for grace now. Don't be dramatic. I hung up. That night, I sat in my apartment with Moose on my lap, a glass of red wine in hand, and watched It's a Wonderful Life alone. But this time, I didn't feel sorry for myself. I didn't feel bitter. I felt peaceful, clear, because I knew something they didn't. While they were playing house and pretending nothing happened, I'd been building something real. A new career path, a sense of self, a quiet confidence that no amount of family gaslighting could strip away again. I started making plans. Not for revenge, not yet, but for real, lasting change. I reached out to old friends I'd lost touch with. Reconnected with my old roommate, Jason, who'd moved to Austin and invited me to visit anytime. I started journaling more, not angry rants, but reflections. Pieces of myself I'd buried long ago. I booked a solo trip to Vancouver for February. I'd never traveled alone before, but something about it felt right. Like a declaration of independence, even if no one else knew it. And maybe the biggest shift of all, I stopped waiting for closure from people who'd never given it. I didn't need Darren to say sorry. I didn't need Kira to explain. I didn't need my mom to admit she was wrong or my dad to stop being emotionally absent. I just needed to reclaim my own narrative. By the time New Year's came, I felt like a different person. Not healed, not fully, but in motion. Awake, alive. But I also knew this chapter wasn't closed yet. Because while I was moving on, they were still pretending everything was normal. And that was the final mistake they'd make. Because I was done playing by their rules. And I had one more thing to say, not through words, but through actions. By mid-January, the weight that had been pressing on my chest since Thanksgiving had shifted. It was still there, that dull ache from betrayal, but it no longer paralyzed me. If anything, it sharpened me, made me alert, focused. Every morning, I woke up with a strange kind of purpose humming under my skin. Not bitterness, not obsession, something more methodical, more deliberate. I wasn't seeking petty revenge. I wasn't going to show up at a family dinner and throw a drink in Kira's face or start screaming about betrayal. That's the kind of thing they expected me to do, blow up, act emotional, give them another reason to label me the problem. No, I was going to be precise, quiet, surgical. I wasn't going to burn bridges. I was going to own them. But first, I needed leverage. The opportunity came faster than I expected. One night, while scrolling LinkedIn, I stumbled across a post from a local real estate firm, Harmon Group, based right in my hometown. They were announcing a new strategic partnership with Darren, who was apparently now launching his own sales training consultancy. There was a photo of him grinning in a blazer that was a size too tight, standing next to Harmon's CEO. The caption read, "Excited to collaborate with Darren Carter, a powerhouse in the sales world. Can't wait to see the magic unfold." That was when it hit me. He finally went out on his own. Darren had always talked a big game about leaving the corporate grind and launching his own venture. He'd tried a few side hustles over the years, drop shipping, crypto coaching, even a failed podcast, but nothing stuck. This time, it looked like he'd landed something real. And Harmon Group was no small fish. They handled commercial and residential real estate, and their reputation in the region was solid. I clicked through the comments. A few mutual connections congratulated him. Kira had liked the post. I kept scrolling. And then, like fate smiling on me, I found it. A comment from one of Darren's college buddies, tagged on Harmon's page. "Didn't you guys used to have an ethics clause about conflict of interest? Guess that's flexible now, lol." That one comment made me pause. Conflict of interest? I clicked on Harmon Group's website, went to their partners page, and did some digging. They had a policy page, buried at the bottom, outlining their vendor standards. And sure enough, there it was. A clear stipulation that any consultant or trainer working with the company could not have direct financial relationships with agents or brokerages in competition, especially not while representing Harmon's brand. So I did some more digging. And guess what Darren had been up to? In addition to launching his sales training gig, he'd quietly registered a new LLC in November, Carter Realty Solutions. On paper, it looked like a consulting service. But a few clicks deeper revealed something else. He'd been recruiting freelance agents, most of whom were still working under other firms, including Harmon. He was building a shadow network, using Harmon's connections to siphon talent for his own future brokerage. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but even I could tell this was dicey. So I printed everything. Every page, every screenshot, every post. I compiled it all into a PDF. Nothing flashy, just factual. No editorializing. No gotcha commentary. Just a quiet, professional case study titled, Potential Ethics Violations, Darren Carter. I didn't send it yet. I waited. Because I wasn't ready to play that card. Not yet. First, I needed to let them feel safe, comfortable, unaware. The next move was personal, not corporate. And for that, I needed someone inside. Claire. My cousin had no idea what she'd done when she sent me that photo. But after our brief text exchange, she hadn't reached out again. I figured she felt guilty. She probably realized she'd exposed something I wasn't meant to see. So I texted her. Hey, I know things were weird on Thanksgiving. Can we talk? She responded in less than 5 minutes. I've been meaning to reach out. I feel horrible, Travis. I didn't know you didn't know about Kira. We agreed to meet for coffee the next day. Claire had always been different. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't manipulative or passive-aggressive. She was sharp, observant, and had always floated on the edges of family drama. Close enough to see it, but smart enough not to get tangled in it. When we sat down at the cafe, she looked nervous. Before you say anything, she said, I want to apologize. I genuinely thought you knew. I wouldn't have sent the photo if I'd known your family lied. I nodded. I know. That's not why I asked to meet. She blinked. It's not. I need your help. And then I told her everything. Not just about the betrayal, but about what I'd found. Darren's double dealing. The Harmon conflict. My parents' gaslighting. The years of favoritism. Everything. Claire listened without interrupting. Her coffee sat untouched, growing cold between her hands. When I finished, she leaned back and exhaled slowly. Jesus, Travis. Yeah. And you're planning to what? Take him down. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just said, I'm done letting them win. And I want to do this the right way. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'm in. I hadn't realized how badly I needed an ally until that moment. Claire offered more than support. She offered access. Because unlike me, she was still in the fold. She still got invited to dinners. Still received the group texts. Still played the part of the loyal niece. Over the next few weeks, she fed me information. Kira and Darren were moving in together, into a new townhouse my parents were partially funding. Mom had told the extended family that I had chosen not to come to Thanksgiving and refused to be around Kira. Dad had told his golf buddies that Darren was going to take over the whole region with his new consulting firm. None of them had a clue what was coming. Meanwhile, I was still rebuilding. I started my new job in February, a fully remote role with a startup based out of Portland. The team was young, ambitious, and genuinely collaborative. For the first time in a long time, I felt respected, valued, heard. I also moved into a new apartment. Bigger, brighter, better view. I donated half my old stuff. Bought new furniture, new sheets, new dishes. It felt like cleansing. And then, right before my birthday in March, I got a call. It was from a former colleague of Darren's. A guy named Brent. I heard you're still tight with Harmon, he said. You might want to know, Darren's been poaching agents. He offered me a cut if I left my firm and joined his new outfit. Felt slimy. I didn't ask him to elaborate. I just thanked him for the call. It was time. I drafted an anonymous email and attached the PDF I'd compiled. I sent it to Harmon Group's ethics board. Then I waited. 3 days later, Claire sent me a text. Did you hear? Darren's partnership with Harmon just ended. Quietly. No explanation. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't finished. The family still thought I was sulking in silence. That I was licking my wounds. Maybe still heartbroken over Kira. They didn't realize I was no longer interested in their version of reality. I was writing my own. And now that the first domino had fallen, it was time to set up the rest. It started with a party invitation. Mid-April, Claire forwarded me a digital invite she'd received via the family group chat. The kind of group I'd been quietly excluded from since Thanksgiving. It was for Darren's soft launch party, a celebration of his new company, Carter Strategic Solutions. Scheduled for May 5th at a boutique event space downtown. Business casual dress code, open bar, catered hors d'oeuvres, RSVP required. The invite featured Darren's logo, his initials stylized like some luxury cologne brand, and a short blurb that read, celebrating a new chapter with friends, family, and partners. Join us as we raise a glass to growth, innovation, and bold beginnings. The arrogance of it made me laugh out loud. Bold beginnings. That was rich. According to Claire, my parents had practically bankrolled the whole thing. Darren had talked them into investing in his future, claiming it would be good for the family. Mom called it supporting her son's dreams. Dad, as usual, just went along with it. Kira, of course, had taken the reins on planning. Claire said she'd been bragging for weeks about the cocktail menu and the flower arrangements. It was perfect. I didn't RSVP. I didn't need to, because I already had an invitation. Not to the event, but to everything else. Thanks to Claire, I now had access to the full Carter family calendar. Where they'd be, when they'd arrive, what Darren planned to say in his speech. I even knew the vendors he hired, the same vendor I contacted behind the scenes with a very simple message. You may want to be aware of the pending investigation regarding Carter Strategic Solutions. If your company values its reputation, consider keeping this partnership discreet. I didn't need them to cancel, just to plant the right seed of doubt. And that was only the beginning. The day before the party, I filed a formal complaint to the state's Department of Professional Regulation. Darren's company wasn't properly registered as a consultancy under the legal criteria for licensed real estate trainers. He'd misrepresented his credentials. I had receipts. His own website claimed certifications he didn't hold. I attached the screenshots and submitted the report anonymously. Then I sent one final message to Kira. I wasn't planning to at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I owed myself the closure. Not a confrontation, not a screamfest, just a reminder that I was no longer the person she left behind. I kept it simple. Hey Kira, just wanted to say thank you for showing me who you and Darren really are. You helped me stop apologizing for taking up space. I hope the wine at your launch party pairs well with delusion. She didn't respond, but I saw the read receipt. That was enough. Then, May 5th arrived. I didn't go to the event, of course. I had something better planned. That night, while the Carters sipped champagne and networked with whoever hadn't already ghosted Darren after the Harmon fallout, I scheduled a post to go live on LinkedIn. It was an article. Polished. Professional. Thoroughly sourced. The headline read, "The Illusion of Integrity, When Salesmanship Becomes Self-Sabotage." I didn't name Darren directly. I didn't have to. The story, a thinly veiled account of a consultant who exploited family loyalty and corporate trust to build a shaky empire, spoke for itself. I included footnotes, references to regulatory codes, and subtle nods to the firms he'd burned. The tone wasn't angry. It was surgical, and it spread like wildfire. By the next morning, it had 7,000 views. Then 12,000. By the weekend, it was trending in the Regional Business Development tag. I wasn't surprised when I got a message from Brent, the former colleague who'd warned me back in February. Holy hell, is this about Darren? Everyone's talking about it. His firm just pulled out of a pending contract. Claire confirmed the fallout within hours. The vendor I'd messaged? They backed out last minute. Kira spent the entire launch night scrambling to replace table centerpieces that never arrived. The venue staff refused to extend their rental because payment hadn't cleared. Darren had planned to close the evening with a video montage, but the AV technician ghosted him, citing a last-minute conflict. It was death by 1,000 cuts. But the real blow came 2 weeks later. A notice went out from the Department of Professional Regulation. Carter Strategic Solutions was under official review for misrepresentation of credentials and unlicensed operation. Their pending contracts were frozen. Darren's reputation, the currency he'd built his career on, was in freefall. Mom called me in a panic. "Travis," she said, voice shaking. "Do you know anything about what's happening to Darren? There's some kind of article going around. People think it's about him." I didn't lie. I know exactly what it is. You wrote it? I wrote the truth. She went silent. "This is your brother," she whispered, as if I'd forgotten. "You could have ruined his career. He ruined it himself. I just stopped covering for him." Another long pause. "Is this revenge, Travis? After everything?" "No," I said calmly. "This is accountability. After everything." She hung up. Dad never called. Lacey texted me a few days later. Just 3 words. "You were right." And that was it. I didn't feel triumphant. Not exactly. But I felt clean. Like I'd scrubbed off something that had been clinging to me for years. The lies. The favoritism. The endless guilt for never being easy enough. I'd thought revenge would feel like fire. Hot. Consuming. But this was ice. Controlled. Inevitable. Permanent. A month later, Claire and I met for drinks. They're still spinning it, she said, sipping her gin and tonic. Mom says Darren was set up. Dad thinks the article was exaggerated. Kira's apparently talking about suing someone for defamation, but she doesn't even know who. I smiled. Let them talk. Claire raised her glass. To being the villain in someone else's story. We clinked. And in that moment, I realized something. I'd spent most of my life trying not to upset people who had no problem hurting me. But not anymore. Because I wasn't their scapegoat. I wasn't their backup plan. I wasn't the forgotten seat at the table. I was the storm they never saw coming. And I never looked back.